And one evening he went out to a little town, Harwood, and he always liked to talk to the people of the town before he went into the schools if he could. And he found that if he called himself Dr. Ellis, they were rather eager to talk to him. So when he got off the train, he saw a group of men sitting over in front of a store whittling. So he went over and got him a box and took out his knife and picked up a piece of pine and started whittling. And his neighbor said, "What might your name be?" He says, "I'm Dr. Ellis." "Oh, that's just what we need. We need a doctor." "Well, don't you have a doctor?" "No, we did have until just the other day, and he was a good one. He could look at you almost and tell what was wrong with you and then give you the right medicine to cure you. But he couldn't leave the whiskey bottle alone. Any patients? And that evening, a farmer from the edge of town came in and wanted to see the doctor. He said, "Well, I guess you could see him, but it wouldn't do you any good. He's so drunk he couldn't help anybody." He says, "I've got to see him. My wife is in labor and I've got to have a doctor." And so they said, "Well, we'll go up with you and see if anything can be done." They went up and doused his head in cold water, gave him all the black coffee he could drink, and pummeled him and told him what the need was. He said, "All right." He said, "All right, I'll take care of it." He said, my legs are drunk, but my mind's sober. I'll go with him." So they put him down up on the wagon, and they went out, and when he got off, he assured the man, says, "Now, I'm all right. I'll take care of your wife." And he went in, and she was in a four-poster bed, and to steady himself, he put his arm around one of the posters near her head, and when he reached for a pulse, he got his own. His eyes got wider and wider and wider. Finally, he said, "Lady, there's just one thing wrong with you. You're just as drunk as hell." Now, when I come to the part in this speech where I talk about my plans as dean of the college, you're going to find it's pretty hard to distinguish between the history of the college and my plans. That's the reason I tell you this story. I might get my own pulse here. I hope not. I thought in this program that we ought to pay tribute to the people most responsible for getting this movement started. Now, back in 1972, when I was writing the history of the college, I discovered that as early as 1929, there were plans in Baytown. People were talking about a junior college, but nothing developed at that time. But when 1934 came along, it was a different story. In fact, in 1933, W.R. Smith, who was one of the ablest schoolmen that I have ever known, really, was making plans. For one thing, he had planned things so that when Lee College opened, it was classified as a first-class junior college, and its credits were transferable anywhere in the state of Texas, even that first year. Well, not only had he planned in that respect, but in 1933, he was employing people that he wanted here to start that college. And among the people that he employed were S.B. Redd, Bliss Redd, who was named assistant dean the first year the college opened, but actually he had all the responsibilities and performed the duties of the dean. Now, the reason he wasn't named dean was that we had to meet in the high school building. So the principal of the high school was named dean so that if any things had to be settled between the college and the high school, he could represent the high school, but his services were never needed. In addition to S.B. Redd, in 1933, there came in Emory Anderson. And Emory will never receive the credit that he deserves for the work that he did. I had known him a long time, We'd taken graduate courses together at the University of Texas. And the first, W.R. Smith came to Austin, and I'd put in an application. And he called, and I was working for my brother, and my brother got me a message that W.R. Smith wanted to see me, and I went and had a conference with him. And at the end of the conference, he said, well, you'll hear from me in a couple of weeks. The next day, I got a letter that said to meet the school board here on a certain date. When I got here, the first person I saw was Emory Anderson, one of my very best friends. I thought, well, the person in the world that I'd most hate to be competing with for a job here is Emory Anderson, but if we are competing with each other, I hope I get it. Of course, we both got it. So that turned out very happily. Then some of you knew, and nearly all of you have heard of a man named Charles Bonner. Charles Bonner was hired so that he could be here to teach in the math department when the college opened. Charles Bonner was the first head of the Department of Mathematics that Lee College ever had. I know that because I appointed him head. And in spite of the fact that we had a policy of rotating department heads, Charles was never rotated. He remained head of the math department as long as he taught, and he was a dandy. Then, with all modesty, I say that for 22 years, your speaker served as dean of the college. Going back now to W.R. Smith, who was the motivating spirit behind this college, it was very sad, I thought, that he was discharged in 1936. He had the complete support of the faculty, and mine doubly, I think. When he was discharged, we gave him a dinner over at the San Jacinto Inn, gave him a nice desk as a going away present, but we couldn't prevent his going away, and I'll talk about that a little later. In fact, I have a letter here, the last letter that I ever got from W.R. Smith that I'll take just a minute to read. It isn't long. This was dated August the 1st, 1972. And let me explain before I start reading the letter that it is written in appreciation for a copy of my book that he thought I sent him, and I did intend him to send one, but when I got this letter, I hadn't done it. And I think Sammy Bramlett was the man that did it. If it wasn't Sammy, I don't know who in the world it was. But he says, "Dear Brother Walter, I am indebted to you for sending to me a copy of your publication covering the history of Lee College from its beginning. It brings to me some very fond memories and some of the other kind also. It made me feel as though I had for once done something really worthwhile. There were occasions when I felt as if nothing will ever come of my efforts. I had no idea at the time that we were getting along with the project well enough for it to become a reality. Even now, as I read your excellent report, it gives me a great big shot in the arm. Many, I'm sure, helped you, and I keep thinking that Sam Bramlett and other members of the board were very helpful. Please express to them my thanks for their help. And to you, my vocabulary is inadequate fully to express my feelings of gratitude. Cordially and sincerely, W.R. Smith." Now, the main reason I want to read that letter is that you'll note he said, "Dear Brother Walter." Now, the charge is that when I was writing this history of the college, there was one man left here who had been bitterly opposed to W.R. Smith and was instrumental in his being sent off. I'd known the man ever since I'd come to Baytown, known him quite well. And I made an appointment with him. And I said, Mr. Seal, you're the only man left who was instrumental in the discharge of W.R. Smith. I'm writing a history of the college, and I think it can't be complete unless we know why W.R. Smith was discharged. I said, well, I tell you, we thought that he let his church activities interfere with his school administration. Well, I don't think that. I think they made a mistake. I think they sent away the best man that they possibly have ever had. And I want to call you a fact that he said, dear brother Walter. That wasn't because we belonged to the same church. We didn't. He never spoke of church membership to me. And so far as I know, he never spoke of church membership to any of my friends or any teacher that I knew. I just think that that's one of the mistakes that comes along, and maybe they can't be avoided. Well, let's go back now for a minute. I told you that S.B. Redd was brought here to take on the responsibilities of the dean. He served as assistant dean for several years and decided that he wanted to take a leave of absence and asked the board for a leave of absence and was granted one. And in the board minute meetings, there is the stipulation that if he performed certain functions and achieved certain accomplishments, all of which he did, he would be named dean in 1942. In 1942, the president of the college called Emory Anderson, who was the acting assistant dean, in and said, Mr. Anderson, you are to be dean of the college next year. Emory said, oh no, that's Bliss Redd's job. He says, no, that's your job. You're to be dean of the college. And Emory, though he knew that the job ought to go to Bliss Redd, couldn't do anything about it, so finally he accepted the job. He became the first man that ever held the title and shouldered the responsibilities of dean. And Emory will just never get credit for the fine things that he did, because he was fighting a battle to keep the college afloat. We had started, I believe, with a student body membership of 177. We'd built up to about 350. The war came along and down we went. We got down to 120 members, 100 girls and 20 boys. The boys were all in the service. And we all shouldered responsibilities that we weren't really expected to shoulder. I did myself. I remember that although my degree was in British literature, and that was what I primarily was prepared to teach, I taught English history, I taught French, just because there wasn't anybody else around to do it. And Charles Bonner, who was primarily a teacher of mathematics, taught engineering drawing because we had to give him something to fill out his load. But he did pull it through. And in 1945, Emory told the board that he was resigning, he was retiring. His father-in-law had left him a drugstore in Palestine and a very nice home on the condition that he come there and run the drugstore. To give you some indication of the kind of man he was, he wouldn't take it until he'd gone to the university and gotten him a degree in pharmacy. But for family reasons, he felt that he had to go. When he went, when he resigned, we gave him a dinner. And I took my son with me. And he said, "Daddy, why is Dean Anderson leaving?" I said, "Well, Walt, he's going to take charge of a drugstore." He says, "But Daddy, isn't that a terrible waste of teaching power?" I said, "Yes, Walt, it is, but sometimes you just have that kind of waste and there's nothing that you can do about it." Well, when Emory left, I was named dean. And then that's where this story that I told you that about the man whose wife was in labor comes in. Because I had very definite plans when I became dean. And for some little time, the plans of Walter Rundell and the history of the college pretty much became the same thing. The first thing that I thought we needed to do was to separate the faculty of the college from the faculty of the high school. We were meeting in the high school building, and if we had the same teachers in the high school, the same people teaching in the high school and the college, it seemed less of a college. Now that wasn't very hard to accomplish. We just quit employing people on a part-time basis from the high school. That was the easiest of all the things that we had to accomplish. The next thing that I had in my program was membership in the Southern Association. Now, the college had applied in 1938, and they'd been turned down. I knew why they'd been turned down, but I hoped that other people would forget it, and apparently they did, because when we applied for membership, we were granted a visitation for evaluation. We had a three-man committee here, and the chairman of the committee was the executive secretary of the Southern Association. They stayed here 3 days, and for a while I didn't know whether we were going to make it or not. But when they met with the faculty, I knew, oh boy, we made it. And actually we had. But before we went to the meeting of the Southern Association, Fred Hartman, in the kind of his heart, and I do think that he really had nothing but goodwill in this story, printed a front page story on the Sun saying that, "Don't get too hopeful, you won't make it this time." Well, the first person that knew that we had made it, other than the people at the meeting, was Fred Hartman. He got a telegram that was mailed not 5 minutes after the vote was taken, and we became members of the Southern Association. Then that helped us in another way. The Southern Association noted that while we had a good program, a good faculty, we needed our own building. So we used that to bring a little pressure to get our own building. And in 1951, the part of the building that are now Walter Rundell Hall and the gymnasium, but at that time were the administration building and the gymnasium, were started. In 1952, we occupied them. So we had achieved 3 of the 4 goals that I had set out for myself. And the 4th one was a complete separation from the public school system. And that was the hard one. But on the 9th day of August, 1965, by a vote of 2,262 to 1,085, we separated from the public schools. So, in 20 years, 1 month, and 9 days, this program had been accomplished, and it was worth it. In 1957, we hadn't had an evaluation since 1948, and I knew that we ought to have an outside group to come in and evaluate our program, and I asked the board to appropriate $1,000 to employ 3 men to come here and stay 3 days and evaluate the college, and the board did. And I thought I'd get the best men that I could, so I got as chairman of that committee, CC, by some of his friends, humorously called Curly because he didn't have a hair on his head, Curly Calvert, who was recognized as the outstanding junior college leader in the United States. He was professor and consultant in junior college education at the University of Texas. To help him, I asked John Starmont, who for years had been dean at Schreiner and for additional years had been dean at Victoria, and because we were trying to get a technical vocational program started, I asked Everett Williams from Del Mar, who had the best technical vocational program in the state at that time. You can imagine my delight and the delight of the rest of the people at the college when the report said, we have found here one of the best community colleges. And when we say one of the best, we don't mean the best in the state of Texas, we mean the best in the United States. And when they came to the evening program, and we worked hard on that evening program because we started as an evening college, when they came to the evening program, they said, we have never seen as good an evening program as the one at Lee College. But as much as I appreciated those comments, I didn't appreciate them as much as I appreciated a simple question that John Starmont asked me. He said, Walter, how do you get and keep a faculty like this? Because your faculty is your answer to your college. If you don't have a good faculty, there's no way in the world that you can have a good college. And if you do have a good faculty and give them a fair chance, you can have a good college. And I'll tell you how we got that faculty. We had reached pretty early the point where the usual system of depending on people to apply for vacancies just wasn't giving us enough people. So I went to the board again. I said, we've got either to have money to give people money to come here and be interviewed, or we've got to have money for me to go to interview. And they said, we can't appropriate any money to bring people here, but you can have anything you need to go wherever you want to recruit faculty. Well, that program worked pretty well. For instance, it's worked well enough to bring us a man like Roland Armstrong here. It brought us a man like Embry Wilson, another one like Henry Austin, another one like Paul Price, who recently retired from the deanship of Lee College. Bob McGraw, Thurman Rowlett, who is here tonight, Delton Gooden, Frank Mastorovich, and that's a pretty good list. There's one of those that just puzzled me a little bit. I had an application from Frank Mastorovich, and I arranged to meet him in the air terminal at Denver. I'd gone to a meeting in Utah, and he was in Wyoming, and we met there. I had a picture of him on his application, and I just hoped I'd be able to recognize him, but I knew that he'd never be able to recognize me. But as I walked into the terminal, a man came up to me and said, Dean Rundell, I'm Frank Mastorovich. So that worked out pretty well, too. But that's not the only place that we got good faculty members. Another place that we got them was selecting the very best from our own college. Several of those are here right now. The first full-time employee of Lee College, who was a graduate of Lee College, was Gertrude Teter. She's been a giant in the earth, along with people like Charles Bonner and Lynn O'Hagan. In addition to Gertrude is Jim Maroney, sitting right behind her. He, too, has been a wonderful influence. John Britt, another fine teacher. Benny Moskowitz, who has made a wonderful contribution all through the years. Jack Carpenter, Robert Wright, and 3 others who are no longer with us, and 2 of whom are no longer alive. Alton Laird, John Ellis, Bob Williamson. I was amused at what a student told me about John Ellis. He taught American history. He said, you know, Dr. Ellis just talks about those old boys as he'd known them all, as if he'd known them all his life. And he really made them come alive. In 1961, an Arab student came to Lee College. He had friends in Baytown, and Baytown people treated him well. The college treated him well. Next year, we had not 1 Arab student, but 5 or 6. And they told their friends, and pretty soon, we had the largest percentage of Arab students in proportion to our regular enrollment of all the colleges of the United States. In 1966, I got a call from my friend George Beto. I'd known George, and we'd been good friends long before he went to prison, to be the director of the Texas Department of Correction. He called and he said, Walter, I want you to come have dinner with me. And I knew that George wouldn't ask me to come to Huntsville to have dinner with him unless he had something important on his mind. And so we arranged a date and went there and had one of the most delicious dinners that I've ever eaten. And he says, well, let's go over to my office. We went over to his office. I said, George, what have you got on your mind? He said, Walter, I want you to start a college program in the Texas Department of Correction next year. I said, George, what do you have in mind? He says, well, I want to teach English, American history, government, economics, psychology, bookkeeping, accounting, typewriting, shorthand. I said, George, several questions come up. One is, how are we going to pay for this? Don't worry, I'll pay for it. We'll pay for it. We make enough money off the rodeo every year to pay for this program, and we'll use it for that. I said, well, George, there's one other qualification that I have. Well, Walter, what is it? I would have to insist, not in the first year, but within the first few years, that we have as many technical vocational programs in the program as we have academic programs. Because you've told us all the years, all through the years, that the reason men get out of prison and go back is that they can't get a decent job, so they go back into crime. And incidentally, I'll just say in passing here, I think that George Beto was the best director of the prison system that we have ever had. So we began the program in the fall of 1906. That year, that first year, we had 5 classes with 176 students. By 1968, we had an enrollment of 688. By 1972, we had 84 classes, 42 of them academic, 42 of them technical vocational. The year I was writing the history, I was walking from the main, well, what's now Walter Rundell Hall, to an office they'd given me in the library to work. And a young man stopped me and said, Dean Rundell, I want to ask you a question. I said, well, I'll answer it if I can. He said, what kind of contract did you have with the prison system when you started this program there? I said, well, we just agreed to furnish the faculty, organize the program, and the prison system agreed to pay for it. He said, is that all? I said, that's all. He said, well, would you just call that an agreement between gentlemen? I said, well, I wouldn't object. And I don't believe Dr. Beto would object either. To bring this to a close now, this brief review, I took over in 1945. I resigned in retired, folks, in 1967. Those were years of growth. In 1945, we had an enrollment of 251 students. In 1966, we had an enrollment of 2,121 students. In 1945, we had a faculty of 13 people. In 1966, we had a faculty of 108. And let me say this about it. If any of this you don't believe, you can go get the book, Lee College for the People, by the People, and it's all there and it's all annotated there. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you so much. It was delightful to hear your account. By the way, in the back, I have Mr. Rundell's book, if you have not seen it. Well, Sam Bramlett had the honor of serving on the first Lee College Board of Regents, but I'm also intrigued with the fact that when he was a student, he was a Blue Devil, and I hope he'll tell us about that.
The best thing that this group could do now is go home. Because anything that's said from now on will just be repetitious. With, well, maybe not, because I'm going to put a few more flyers on it than Walter did. He's kind of bashful because he's had a long time to practice. You don't know, and get what I'm saying. You do not know who you have heard tonight. And when he talks about these people, that's the varsity. That's the varsity. You take a look at them. They don't believe in going someplace else to find a better job because they have one, and they're not going to leave. And the ones that have come after these that he's named, they're just as foolish as these first ones. They're going to stay too. Can you imagine, really? First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Ms. Audrey Mazur, for asking me to come and say a few words to this group along with these other three people, three students and this professor here, and Mr. Rundell, Gertrude, Sue. I'll tell you one thing I noticed tonight. Gertrude, they gave us this time limit and they took the hands off of the clock because they knew you were coming. But we're not going to pay too much attention to time tonight because this is a good time. And incidentally, if you want any proof that that letter he got from W.R. Smith is not authentic, you just let me look in my file. And, yes, he talked church sometimes to people because he offered me a scholarship at Abilene Christian College if I'd come out there and go to school. Said, Sam, I can't put you up in the board, I can't buy any books or anything like that, but I can get you through the school without it costing you a penny. That's W.R. Smith. My other friend, W.M. Dow, was out there and he backed it up, but I couldn't go. I had a mother and a sister to support after I finished Robert E. Lee. But anyhow, let's get along. And I did, for just a day or two, act as an instructor in a mechanical drawing class for the high school after I started the school at Lee College. Mr. W.R. Smith had come down and I thought, oh Lord, what have I done now? President of the college calling me out. But he said, I want you to go down here and hold this class today. Mr. Ward is not able to be here. And I said, okay, you think I can do it? He said, I came after you, didn't I? So that's the way he got me in that job. And you know how much I got paid? Hold on. $6. Man, at that time, $6 was something to this poor boy. But we did that